Hey everybody, back with this Sinistar board. I don't know, like always, I don't know exactly what I'm going to be filming, but I was trying to take some signature analysis on the ROM board, and the first thing I realized is I actually have prototype ROMs in here. That might be, I had to actually kind of screw up one of the labels here just to verify they were 2732s. These can be strapped as 2732s or 2532s, but I think all Sinistar boards came with 2732s. There's two jumpers basically right here and right here that changes the strapping of this between a 2532 and 2732. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. What did I want to talk about? This LED. It's pretty simple. I'm looking at the schematic there. I mean, basically, here's the LED. You have, I think, like 7 resistors because there's 7 segments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7 resistors, 7 segments. There's this 7447 chip right here, and then it's getting its, well, 3 of these lines are pulled high, I guess, by this 9C resistor pack, 4.7K. So I don't know what this chip is yet. LT, PB1, PB0, those are all pulled high, and then we have A, B, C, D data coming in, which should be outputting something on here. So either this chip is bad, or the data from the PIA is bad, or the data going into the PIA, which could be based off of the ROM data, is wrong. So I figured we would do some troubleshooting here. I might pull the PIA and test it in my Neolock just to rule it out. Whoops. Probably put the probe on this 7447. Maybe do a logic comparator on it. I don't know. There's nothing here I can do with signature analysis. I mean, data is coming into this PIA, which is driving probably these outputs here, this PB stuff. So, and those outputs are driving this. So, that's what we're going to do. I mean, I don't really have anything to compare it to unless I go grab another board. So, just going to troubleshoot that real quick. Figure out if I can figure out this LED. And if I have to, I'm going to burn a set of replacement ROMs anyway. I might keep these, but if I'm doing signature analysis, I might as well do the signature analysis on both sets of ROMs, because I can actually do the prototype ROMs. The version 2 ROMs is just 2 ROMs different than version 3, so might as well burn a set, I guess. Let's see if there's anything else. There's these couple buffer chips here that I can't get signatures on, because these buffer chips, it's the address lines. The address lines come into these buffers, but they're pulled high by these resistor packs, the outputs of these. And so these special chips, I don't know anything about these special chips, but the address buffer lines that come into them, they must be controlling it somehow, because they're pulled high with these 2 resistor packs. And so I don't know exactly what's going on here, like how do these get enabled, and then when they get enabled, do these address lines go low and then these start toggling? I have no idea, but just with regular signature analysis, I can't get through these address buffers because they're pulled high by these resistors. But the other, that's just on this. Let me see if I can show you on the signatures here. That's really, these address buffers, 3F and 0F, are only for these special chips here. They don't go anywhere else on the board that I can tell right now. And then the normal address lines coming from the CPU board, that address bus does go to the PIA. Where does it go? A little bit goes to the PIA, a couple lines. One of the lines looks like it's a chip select function for the PIA, and they come back down through here for all the ROMs. As you can see over here, it's kind of a mess, but basically all of this is address lines coming into those ROMs right there. So we can definitely get the address that signature analysis on the ROMs. I cannot figure out exactly how to do it on these buffers here, and then eventually into these special chips. I don't know if there's anything I'm going to be able to do with those special chips from a sig analysis standpoint. But there are some enables and some crap, and this decoder we can do signature analysis on. That's pretty easy. What's that other chip? I haven't even got to that other chip. What is this chip? I'm not sure. Anyway, I'll come back to that. I don't even know what that is. All right, this could be a little fun, but anyway, this 7447 basically gets its instructions from the PIA. Where's the PIA? I guess this is the PIA. Okay, I thought it was removable. Damn, that sucks. I don't want to remove that PIA. But anyway, all right, so yeah, this is the PIA right there. Sorry, I'm not always looking through the camera, but these are the outputs of the 7447, and there's 7 segment LEDs, 7 resistors, and there's 7 outputs, starting at 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And so if we look at 9, it's high, and then I'm just going to go through. 10 is low, 11 is low, 12 is high, 13 is high, 14 is low, 15 is low. So how many lows do we have? There's 1, 2. Anyway, I don't know if that's not really making sure. If we look at the inputs, and I might actually, to do this, I'm gonna have to. The inputs are 1, 2, 6, and 7. So that's 1. It's basically at 2 volts. That's 2. 3 is something else. And then 6. 6 is high. 7 is about 2 volts. But what I was noticing is if I hit the reset button, I don't know how I'm going to do this with one hand. Might have to come back with the. There, I'll try it here. Let's see. I'm going to hit the reset button. We're going to put our probe on 6 right there. And you see that it's high as the screen's booting up, and then it goes low. And then it comes back high again. So when the 0, pin 6, it's low when all the LEDs are on. So either something's going on with this chip, or the instructions that are controlling it are bad. I don't know which one. Because I don't want to solder, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to replace all of these ROMs with new ROMs and see if that changes the behavior. Because maybe the instructions that are driving the PIA, the data that's driving the PIA, is wrong, and there's some code issue there, and that's why we're getting this. I'm not sure. But it should be 0, I think. Alright, while I'm taking a long time to burn these 2732s, I figured I'd do some ROM signature analysis since I already have these ROMs in there. So the first thing is, if we're going to look at these ROMs, we need to put our select line on one of the chip enables. And on these 2732s, pin 18, so this is 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. That's low. It's actually tied low all the time. That's one of the chip enables, or CE, and then 19, 20 is high, and it needs to be active low. But you can see it's high. And the reason that is because of this decoder chip here. There's 2, let me see if I can show. What is it? It's a 74, 154, 154, 154. Bear with me, I'll get there. 154, come on now. Alright, there we go. Alright, so here's a 154. It's a 4-line to 16-line decoder. And I know you're not going to be able to see this, but this basically G1 and G2 let's see here, is that right? G1 and G2, when they both need to be low, basically. And when they're low, depending on these inputs, okay, it's going to be kind of hard, but there's a cascading value. So like you have 4 inputs here, and low, low, low means the output 0 is low and everything else is high. And then low, 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 high, high, low, and the rest are high, like that. It's kind of difficult, but you can see it kind of just goes L, 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 L in a cascading fashion. So if you think of it as, you know, along the, if we were drawing it out, let's see, do I have a pen? I'm not good at explaining this stuff, guys, but if you look at, like, you have all these different enables for all the different ROMs, and one's going to be like, this one's going to be low, and then this one's going to be, you know, like high, and then low, and then high, and this one's going to be high for 2 cycles, and then low, you know what I mean, and it's going to be low, 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 and then this one would be low at this point, and this one would be low at this point, and the rest of them would be like this. And so you get this kind of cascading values for all the chip enables in the ROM. So, but anyway, so if I go to pin G1 and G2, which are pins 18 and 19 of this thing. So this is 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and you can see it's toggling. And then if I go to 19, it's low. So some of my ROMs are being enabled right now with the no-op adapter, but some of them are not. So what I'm going to do is take that pin 18 and tie that low, and then based off of the inputs, I'll be able to free run through this decoder and have every single ROM enabled and be able to take ROM signatures. So let me go ahead and put a jumper in there, ground this one, and then we'll check our enable pins real quick of a couple ROMs. Okay, so I have that grounded. Let's power it back on. We get our standard little screen there with our no-op adapter, and now let's come to pin 20, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And you probably can't see it. Let's see. We can see that it is transitioning there. So there's our transition for that one. And that's a different ROM chip there. Different ROM chip there. So now all of these are being enabled correctly. And so what we want to do is turn this on here. See if I can explain this all on the fly here. We're going to put our start and stop on that enable pin, which is pin 20. So 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. We can get it in there without shorting anything, okay? And we're going to, basically what we're doing is we want to capture data, so we're still using our system clock, and we're going to capture data because it's only active, right? This ROM is only outputting data when that enable line is low. So we want to capture data when it's low and stop capturing data when it goes high again. So our clock, we're going to capture as much data as the clock. So if the clock is transitioning a lot faster, obviously, than this is transitioning. This is running at like 1 megahertz. That's transitioning, you could tell, you know, once every, you know, couple milliseconds or a millisecond or something. Actually, I guess I could, should I put that on the probe? Let's see. Do a frequency measurement. That's my frequency there, 29,000 hertz, so 29K, and my clock is, you know, a lot faster, obviously. So is number of times, or actually maybe I could use totalize. I'm getting off track anyway. I am curious about trying to use some of the different aspects of the tools and stuff, but so basically, yeah, we're capturing the data, or the, you know, for every clock pulse, we're recording a 0 or 1. So for every time that clock transitions, the data probe of the signature analyzer is recording a 0 or a 1 based off of what was coming out of the data lines here. So like for every clock pulse, it's saying, oh, that was a 0, that was a 1, and then it's going to stop by the time that this transitions again. This enable pin transitions on the upside again. So we have our start on the net falling edge, our stop on the rising edge. Clock is our normal system clock, and then we use a data probe. Here's my data probe. I know I didn't do a great job explaining it, but, and our outputs, for example, is pin 9 is D0. So pin 9, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. Shit. And we can see we have a stable signature there. And if I go to pin 10, so basically, fuck, damn, I'm slipping. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, there's 9. And so that is all the address lines, you know, that went through the address lines over there. I guess there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Looks like 12. Or 10. No, there's probably 10 because A11 is probably not used. But anyway, so you got 10 address lines that are addressing, you know, this ROM, and all the data in that ROM that's supposed to come out on that line, data line 0, that's basically getting compressed and then read as a four-digit hexadecimal number. So basically, we're just going to go through the data outputs, record the signatures, just like this. I'm getting stable signatures, and we record all the outputs, and then we'll move our start and stop to the other enable pin for, you know, number 2, and then record all the outputs, and then go to number 3, record all the outputs. Now, is this easier than just pulling the ROMs and reading them? No, not really, but what you're testing here is that these ROMs are obviously being addressed correctly, and the data coming out of it is correct. So you're kind of testing not only your decoder a little bit, I think, but you're also in the addresses that are running that decoder, but you're also verifying that all of these ROMs are being addressed correctly on the board, and that the data coming out of them is correct. So it is a little bit better than just pulling the ROMs and reading them, you know what I mean? But not as good as using a fluke. Because if you're using a fluke, you can actually address this ROM and get the data back. So you're testing the entire address path and enable to the ROM itself, and you're getting testing all the data, buffers, and everything coming back. So fluke is like best way to test it. Sorry, I got cut off. But anyway, you get the idea. I'm set up to do ROM signatures. we needed to ground one of the, I think enables or strobes, actually. It's a strobe on this decoder chip here, which allowed the enable pins to kind of cascade, and then our address bus is free running with a no-op adapter, so we're able to address the ROMs, and then we use start and stop on our enable, change their start to falling edge, stop to rising edge, put your data probe on the data output, record the signature. I'm going to do that, and then I'll be back with something different. So it took me probably less time to record all of these ROM signatures for those ROMs right there. Took me less time to record all those than it did to probably burn those. Each chip, like these are old chips, so it's like 50 milliseconds pulse. I mean, it takes several minutes to program each chip. But anyway, I got that in there. I sprayed some deoxit on the sockets. I guess let's power it up. Hopefully I don't make things worse. That's what you risk anytime you mess with these boards, but I'm having fun, whatever. Let's see here. Coming up, let's look at first what our high score table looks like. All tests indicate all, yep, factory settings restored. So I probably have to reset it. And that was probably because I have different ROMs in there. Still looks jacked up to me. I don't know. That doesn't look right. But the Sinistar I see is totally different. But then I got some weird stuff going on down there. Interesting. And then it doesn't say empty up there. So there are definitely some differences. And my LED is the same. So it's either got to be the PIA or this chip here. I think that's the only thing controlling is these two chips right here controlling that LED, and we know that the things are lit correctly. So probably easier to try to find one of these chips than desolder this. I don't know. That's kind of interesting. Let me reset it one more time just to see what it looks like. Definitely different. The attract screen is different. I still have some high score table issues, I think, going on. Yeah, see, like, what's all that about? I could probably clear that out. That might be like the attract mode configuration. One of the guys, Arcade.com, commented that I need to clear out my bookkeeping information, but when I go into the test menu, actually, I guess I'll show that real quick. I think this is ground, and I need to ground the test, and then we'll hook this up to ground, and then hit our service switch. Oh, well, that's better, because when I was doing it before, like, what's up with that? See how it looks like the controls, like something's going on with my controls. They should I don't know exactly how to yeah, it's like something's stuck. I got some problems with my interface board. It's not doing anything. That arrow's not moving at all. Now, granted, this is an optical. It's a little bit different, but something is not right, because I can't even adjust it to clear the bookkeeping. So Arcade.com gave me the idea, but I think I have an interface board problem, and these interface boards are unique to Sinistar. So there might be a PIA there and a PI there. I don't know. We got some stuff going on with this board. I don't know exactly. Eventually I'll figure it out, but it wasn't the ROMs, that's for sure. See, I got a 0, all systems go. Now I got factory settings restored. So I have to reset it again. I'm a little hesitant because I don't have the soundboard hooked up. I don't know if that matters or not, but it shouldn't. But I got some type of CMOS corruption, I'm sure. I mean, I need to reset that. That's like something you can program into the system itself. And I can't work into I can't work the menu because of something's going on with this interface board, I guess. All right, figure out what to do. All right, actually I didn't have my interface board plugged in. That was the problem. All right, so let me go back into my service menu. And we'll hit it again. Yeah, you see how it moved all the way down? Like something is... Let me see if I can go up. Okay, right here. Watch. I'm moving it up, and then it goes right back down. Something is not right on my interface board, and this is why I can't clear the bookkeeping totals or high score table reset or any of that stuff. I'd like to be able to clear that crap, but I can't get it to stop. So something is going on my interface board, and I guess, is this another PIA? I don't really want to take that off. Yeah, but that's what I was seeing before. That's why I can't clear the high score table. Oh, now I have no LED. Interesting. Let me reset. Got that. I get a 0. It says factory settings restored. Reset again. Why is it saying that when I have NVRAM installed? Got a 0. All systems go. Okay, and that's what I'm used to. Oh, I guess when I went into test mode, the LED went out. Yep. When I went into test mode, the LED went out. I guess there is some bookkeeping stuff in there. Center slot, left slot, 156 coins. Interesting. Oh well. Alright, I was doing some investigation on this LED here. It's a 7-segment LED. Can you see that right there? Hopefully you can. Alright, so anyway, there's basically 7 outputs that drive these 7-segment LEDs, and it's based off of these 4 inputs: pin 7, 1, 2, and 6. You know, that's 4 to the power of 2, so there should be, I think, 16 combinations. And if I look at the schematic here, you have, based off of, you know, the combinations of what's on the input, if all of them are low, then you'll have a certain output, and it tells you like which. So if all of them are low, you'll have a 0. If all of them are high, you'll have a 15, as an example. And here's all the different numbers it can display. So it's actually displaying 11 right now, which means that basically we should be high on the D input, then low on the C, B should be high, A should be high. So if I map that out to A, B, C, so basically A should be high, B should be high, C should be low. So the only one that should be low is pin 2 out of that to display that, and it really should be displaying a 0. And that's based off this chip right here on the input, and then these resistors pull it high because the type of chip it is, it has to be pulled, the outputs have to be pulled high. So anyway, what I figured I would do is, let's look at this on the scope. So pin 1, and I've already figured it out actually, but I'm backtracking for you guys. Let's look at pin 2. Alright, pin 2 is low, and pin 1, well, I've already disconnected that one. Pin 6 and 7. So pin 6 is high, and it's supposed to be high. Then pin 7, you can see it's not low, but it's got a couple volts on it. Actually, I can put my voltmeter on here. DC volts. And let's do pin 7. Do I have the right setting on there? Oh, it's that right there. So 1.67 volts is what I'm reading there. And then I was also reading that on pin 1, pin 2 is low. So pin 2 is working correctly, it seems, on the input there. It's supposed to be low, and pin 6 is working correctly because it's supposed to be high. But to draw that symbol, we're supposed to be number 11 there. We're supposed to be C is pin 2, which is low. And then the rest of them are supposed to be high, so 6 and 7. So what I did is number 1 was also reading high, so I cut the pin, and I can tell there's a little bit of voltage coming from the PIA, but not much. So it was definitely getting pulled higher, and I don't know if that's because of the PIA or because of the chip here. So the easiest thing is for me to cut the chip, really. Because if I brought that high and bring this high, then we'd actually, but you're not supposed to bring inputs high like that, I don't think. I don't know, I think there's something wrong with this chip. If I look at, I don't know why, even with that chip cut, why is there some voltage coming out of the PIA? The PIA pin is, the PIA pin for pin 1 is pin 17. So that's right here. This is 20, 19, 18, 17. And pin 16. You can see the difference there. There's pin 16. There's pin 17. I think it's this 7447. So I'm going to replace that. One of them's working correctly, and the rest of them are not. Which one is supposed to be high? Yeah, because pin. Okay, yeah, the number 6 is high. And number 2 is low. And all of them are supposed to be... No, 2 is the only one that's supposed to be low, right? Yeah, pin 2 is the only one that's supposed to be low. The rest of them are supposed to be high, but for some reason it's not able to go high. Oh, so maybe it is. Hold on, I might cut out most of that, but anyway, this will make more sense here. So on the inputs, what we're supposed to be seeing is a 0. So we're supposed to be seeing low, 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 low. But that's not what we're seeing here, right? We got pin 6 is all the way high. I mean, at 5 volts almost, right? And then pin 2, pin 1, if I look at pin 1, even with it disconnected, I'm getting 1.16 volts, so it's actually not quite high, but it's higher than 0.8, which would be a low. Pin 2 is low, which is, so pin 2 is the only one that's looking correct, and then pin 6 is way high, and pin 7 is almost high. So to me, what we need to do is I'm going to cut these pins and really measure at the PIA, at the outputs there, because that really should be the determining factor there, as far as what these values are, whether it's going high or low. So if I cut those, I bet we'll be able to measure on the PIA side. So hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, so I'm thinking the PIA is correct and something's wrong with this chip, which is pulling the signals high. These resistors are tied high, and so whatever internal into this chip is broken so that it's not it's artificially letting the signal be pulled high, basically. Maybe I cut the pins except for pin 2. I'm going to power it back on. Now the LED is going to look totally jacked up now because I have the pins cut. No, it's basically exactly what we get before. Alright. So now if I come to pin 1, it is low, which is what it should be. Based off of seeing a 0, 0, 0, I should get low. Pin 1B should be low. Pin 2, I didn't cut that one, but that should be low, and it is low. Right? Pin 6, is high. It should actually be low. So that one, pin 6, could be something jacked up with the PIA. Pin 7 is low, not all the way low. So maybe it is something with the PIA, that one chip right there. Because that should be low if I'm supposed to be getting all zeros. But based off of this input, that's low. That's low. So everything's low except for signal D, which is high. So coming from the PIA, it's actually low, 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 high, which if I look at the inputs here would be a 1. So that might be the what it might be reading if the PIA is functioning correctly. We should be seeing a 1. No, I'm sorry, I'm jacked up. It's D, signal D, so it'd be low, all lows. We'd be seeing an 8. HLLL. Yeah, only D, pin 6 is high. So we'd be seeing the number 8 in theory, based off of what the PIA is putting out. Alright, I ordered a replacement one of these. I'm going to replace it and then probably see what we get and what the behavior is. Either the PIA is jacked up, or this, whatever you call this thing, what is it called? BCD to 7-segment decoder. Either that's messed up, which I think it is, because we definitely shouldn't be seeing that character there, and stuff is floating high, like almost like a full volt. I'm gonna cut pin 2. I think I don't know if I can do this. I am going to do it with one hand, but basically pin 6 I think is behaving correctly and being driven correctly from the PIA, because it is hot. Whoops, it's high right now, but if I hit reset, which I'm going to do real quick, and then put my Pro back on, so it's going through the boot sequence, and you can tell when it goes to 0, it will go down to low, which it's supposed to be, and then it goes back to high. So the PIA is definitely driving it low, and then letting it come back high again. But is it supposed to be high all the time? Yeah, so here's pin 1. It's obviously high as the screen is booting up, and then it goes low. And then it changes a little bit. It like floats back high a little bit, but not too much. 0.05 volts. So that could be a bad thing. So now I'm on pin 1, right? Game's running. I'm gonna hit reset. Come back to pin 1. As it's running diagnostics, it's high, which would probably be blank LED, I bet. Yep. And then it goes low. So yeah, you can see that actually. When all the inputs are high right here, it's number 15, and number 15 is a blank LED. So I think the PIA is working correctly, and what we should be seeing is actually based off of the PIA and the inputs, we should be seeing low, low, high. We were seeing high, high, low, high, because a couple of these were floating high. These two actually were floating high. This one looks like it's supposed to be high. This one's supposed to be low. And what we're actually seeing from the PIA right now is, let's just verify. 1 and 2 are low, 6 is high, 7 is low. So what we're seeing is low, 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 high, which should be number 8 right there. Low, 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 high, number 8, which would be those 7 segments like that. So I wonder what that means. Maybe it's because my soundboard's not connected. I'm going to look up the directions and see what 8 means, and then also I'm going to replace this BCD, see if we can get the LED working correctly. Alright, so it's the next day. Ordered some 74 LS 247s, slightly different than 7447. The only difference between the 47 and the 247 is I think that if you make a 9, it's going to look like that with a 47, and with a 247 a 9 is going to look like that. And same thing with the 6. They call this the tail. So the tail is missing, is not included on the 247, but is there on the 47. Anyway, so 247 would work. But before I put those in, and I paid a little bit extra by getting this on Amazon because I didn't want to wait. But it was probably only, I think this was like $5 for 5 of these. Whoops, $5 for 5. It's not that much more. I mean, you're paying a couple extra bucks for shipping and stuff, so it wasn't that bad. Hopefully they work. But I wanted to come back to this because the inputs are 1, 2, 6, and 7. And right now the game's running. And you can see I have a little bit of voltage on pin 1, but not much. Same with pin 2, just barely, a little bit. 6 is high, which seems a little weird that it's high, but whatever. And then 7 is should be low, but there is a little bit of voltage, about a half a volt. So it is kind of rising up a little bit coming from the PIA. And then these resistors are pull-ups as well. So I don't know if there was actually anything wrong with the thing or not, or I mean, how much should these pull up to 5 volts? Because I think this is 5 volts. Yeah, the side of these resistors are all 5 volts. I mean, it's not pulling up anything right now because the other side of the chip is not connected. But what I figured I would do is, each one of these is behaving correctly. Like if you put it on the reset, it will go high. All of them will go high, even including 6. Then all of them will go low, showing a 0. And then for whatever reason, 6 goes back high, which is for the number 8. But we don't see 8, we see C, because a couple of these were floating up. Very strange. So I think I've shown that enough. I read some threads and a whole bunch, not a whole bunch, but it has been mentioned that a C is normal for Sinistar. And this is obviously a backwards C, not a C, but people have mentioned that this is normal, which is weird to me. Like, it shouldn't be normal. But let me put this chip in here, power it off, and come right back. I got my chip in there. I don't even know if they work. There was one feedback on the Amazon that says it doesn't work. So we'll see. Just watching the LED. It's got nothing on it right now. Then we get a 0. And then we get a C. So there's nothing wrong with this for some reason. Why? And see, it's being pulled up. It's like it's crossing over the 0.8 threshold enough to generate that. And I don't think that's normal. Pin 2, so it's behaving. It's behaving just like the other one was. Pin 2 is all the way down. Pin 6 is all the way high. And pin 7 is now a little bit higher than what it was before. Man, I mean, there's got to be something going on with Sinistar boards. Like, why? Because it's obviously pin, what was it? It's this one right here. Pin 6 is way high, right? Pin 2 is all the way low. Pin 1 is kind of just floating a little bit, and pin 7 is just kind of floating a little bit. And to me, these should be way down. Wacky. So I guess it is normal for Sinistars, but I think it's because something's going on. You know, they're not driving this, keeping this as low as it should be. Look at pin 2. Pin 2 is 0.018 volts. And look at pin 1. 0.151 volts. And that should be low. Like if I can ground that real quick. Let me ground that real fast. That is ground. I will ground pin 1. I get a 9. Oh, I guess it does have tails on it. Maybe the other one doesn't have tails? I don't know, wacky. Huh. Well, that solved nothing. I still think something's screwed up. Maybe I'm gonna look at that circuit. What else is on there? Why is this PIA floating those pins high just a little bit, and then this resistor here is bringing them even higher? If I just come back, if I ground those, like pin 6 is the only one, dang it, whoops, almost shorted. Pin 6 is the only one that's high, that's really high. You know what I mean? Like we saw before. I mean, it's at 5 volts. And so if I ground 1 and 2 like it's supposed to be, instead of floating them high, we get what I expect, which is the 8. You know, 8, 1 is low, 2 is low, 7 is low, 6 is high. That results in an 8. That 8 could be because I don't have the soundboard hooked up. I don't know. I'm going to run through this. Well, no, I mean, for some reason, why does it say 8? Because I think that's what Sinistar is supposed to actually be showing, but for some reason, all of these Sinistars, it's you know, rising up above like the 0.8 volt threshold. All right. I had my probe on ×10, so I just figured I would quickly document and hook up my HP 5005. And on pin 1, we have half a volt as the game's running. Half a volt. Pin 2 is 0.08 volts, so that's the one that's low. Pin 6, almost 5 volts, 4.8. And 0.45 volts on pin 7. And if I just come to a ground connection just to show you what the voltage is, you know, 0.05 volts. So I mean, it's reading a little bit on ground anyway. And what would be, this is pin 16, this is 5 volts, so that's 5 volts. So anyways, the other thing is the ones that are floating high a little bit from the PIA are both PB7 and PB6, whereas CB2 and CBA are the other two lines, pin 2 and 6. 6 is high, that's being controlled by CA2. Pin 2 is completely low like it should be, and that's CB2. CA2 and CB2 seem to be doing a better job of holding their voltage down than PB7 and PB6, which is getting pulled high a little bit, or high enough where it registers as a high. Just very interesting. I don't know why Sinistar is different and this circuit is behaving differently. I'm going to put my Joust board on here, my Joust ROM board, because I'm just curious as heck to figure out what the heck is going on. So I'm going to do that and come back. Alright, I have my Joust board hooked up. I haven't powered it on, but basically, yeah, I'll just power it on. What the hell? We powered it on. Let's come to pin 1. Just watch the voltage for pin 1. And basically when it's not 0, well, it is 0 right now, right? It's 0, and we're reading 0.11 volts, so it's actually reading low. And if I'm going to go to pin 2, that's reading 0.112. Pin 6, almost the same thing. And pin 7 is almost the same thing. Now, one thing I did notice is that this LED is an HP, the hell is that? 50827730. And there's, I wish I was a, electronics engineer, but there's different voltage drops, or, I mean, that, so this is wired to 5 volts. And then when the LED turns on through a diode, there's a certain voltage drop, and then you configure these resistors, which are 150 ohms, to, I guess compensate so that the brightness is the same or something like that for all the LEDs. I try to read about it, but I don't understand like how this voltage being tied to 5 volts, then going through these resistors to the outputs of the 7447 is causing some of the inputs to come up a little bit, because obviously those inputs are definitely coming up. I'm not going to screw with my Joust board to see how far they're coming up, but like pin 39 is one of the outputs. I mean, it's the same right now, so it's, and also I think the code between what's driving the LED is behaving somewhat differently. Like on the Sinistar, Sinistar, basically, what is it? Pin 6, right, is high. Yeah, pin 6, the CA2 is actually being driven high. I mean, it's all the way high, and CB2 is actually being driven low. And then it's leaving PB7 and PB6 to be floating, whereas on the joust board, it appears that all of them are left floating. You know what I mean? They're not, the outputs of the PIA are not being driven, so they're floating, and they're having a tendency to float a little bit, but just not high enough to actually cross the threshold of triggering, you know, a high level input. So it's just below whatever, you know, the spec of the 7447. You would think it would have to be above 2 volts or 2 point something volts, but you know, it's about 0.1 volts. No, it was almost 1 volt, right? Or it is 1 volt. How much is it? No, 0.1 volts, whereas on my, I was getting like half a volt. Oh, now I'm confused. Yeah, I think I was getting like a half a volt, so it was on my Sinistar board. So, which I think was, you know, activating it, which is why we were getting the thing. Anyway, I don't know. I don't understand it enough. If it's, I think it's partially the software on the Sinistar that's driving the LED is different for whatever reason. And I also think that because of the LED, you know, and the pull through voltage or something, it's impacting the inputs here, or these are floating on this board, don't float as high as on the other board. Anyway, I don't think, I made a post about it on klov. If somebody has some ideas, like either replacing this LED on the Sinistar board, changing these resistor values, I think could change the behavior. But ultimately, I think the software is driving the PIA differently as well. So, very strange. All right. Since I started filming this, and obviously the progression was, I started looking at stuff, got interested in this thing, didn't know that C, backward C, was actually normal. Went and looked up, researched on klov, found out other people were saying C is normal, but that was beyond. That was after I had already started down the path of replacing the 7447 and stuff. But anyway, I'm glad I did, because it was interesting. And one of the people that had commented on a thread in klov many years ago, probably 5 years ago or more, was a guy named Sean Riddle. And he's one, I think, the first guys, I don't know him personally, but he was one of the first guys, or the first guy, that actually made a multi-kit for Williams games or something. But I just ended up emailing him, and he got me on the right path. He actually solved the mystery here. So I'm gonna backtrack and go through a little bit of stuff, and because I'm explaining crap wrong all through the video as I watched it back and stuff. But regardless, LEDs tied to 5 volts. These resistors don't really, they kind of bring it high. There's definitely some voltage pull through or something. I don't know the right terminology, but these resistors are really just to keep the brightness the same, depending on which segments are on and off and stuff like that. So this has, you use these resistors based off of like how many milliamps and stuff this is pulling or some crap like that. I don't know. But anyway, so these resistors aren't necessarily going to change the behavior. And I also changed my probe so I could get some better measurements to ×1, so I wouldn't get confused. And what I did is basically wrote down, so joust, what do the pins look like? Pin, you know, D, 2, 1, and 7. And I already wrote them down here, right here. So it's, on a joust, they're all, whoops. On joust, I wrote down the wrong thing here. On joust, they should all be 0.1 volts. And we're going to show that real quick. All being driven low by the PIA and the code that's obviously instructing the PIA what to do. So let's go to pin 1, and we see I have 0.1 volts. Okay, and then I go to pin 2. You know, there's a little bit of voltage, but not much. 0.1 volts, right? Pin 6, 0.1 volts. Pin 7, 0.1 volts. So we know the joust is 0.1 volts. Now, one of the things Sean said that he did is as he was testing this, and we were going back and forth in email and stuff, is he said he hooked up a 1,000 ohm resistor and pulled things down or pulled things high, and because if they were being driven by this PIA, the 1,000 ohm resistor shouldn't be enough, I guess, to actually influence the logic level of the output of the PIA. So basically I have a jumper here. Now I have a 470 ohm resistor, so it's not quite the same. Whoops. But we're just going to touch pin 1 and see if we can get the LEDs to change. And I can't. Right? So we know that the PIA is actually not floating these lines, it's actually driving these lines. And I learned this from Sean. This isn't something I knew about, but I figured if I learned it, then maybe I can share it with you guys. So we know I touched all those input pins, and I'm tied to 5 volts. Just to show you, I'll put my lead on here, and you can see I'm at 5 volts, right? But the PIA is driving that pin low, and that's why I can't pull it up, because it's driving it low. So what I'm going to do now is disconnect my Joust ROM board, hook up my Sinistar board. We'll look at the voltage levels again without the 7447, with the 7447, and mess with this pull up, pull down, and see what we get. So we got my Sinistar board back hooked up. The 7447 is unplugged. We're going to go through our all systems go check here eventually. Might say, in fact, okay, I got to reset it again. And then after that, we're going to measure the voltage, and it should be pin 6 should be 4.9 volts, pin 2 0.1 volt, pin 1 0.35 volts, pin 7 around 0.3 volts. Obviously pin 1 and 7, it looks obvious that they are floating. It's not obvious that pin 6 is floating, but that's what we're going to use our resistor for. Alright, so the system's up and running. Go to pin 1, 0.33 volts, as you can see there. So you definitely see the line move a little bit. Pin 2, 0.08, so almost even less than 0.1. So pin 1's 0.3, pin 2's basically 0.1, pin 6, 4.9 volts almost, and pin 7, 0.3 volts about. So basically just what I wrote down here pretty much. Now, I don't have, well, I guess I'm not going to use the LED right now. I'm gonna power off, put in the 74. Game is running. We got our backward C. We come to pin 1. Now we're at 1.3 volts. We go to pin 2. We're still low, 0.08 or 0.09, so it hasn't really changed much. Pin 6, 4.82 volts, hasn't really changed much. And 1.2 volts or 1.3 volts on pin 7. So that's exactly what I have here. So the LED and these resistors is basically impacting the inputs of the 7447. I mean, before it was 0.35 volts, and now it's 0.13 volts. Before it was 0.3, now it's 1.3. So I mean, it's basically an increase of a volt. There's a volt coming from this LED through these resistors, pulling this inputs higher. But that shouldn't be happening if this thing was driving those pins either high or low. And that's when we're going to go use this. So pin 1 is low. So if I bring it, no, actually I'm going to do the opposite. I need to ground this thing. I'm going to ground this. So because pin 1 right now is floating to 1.3 volts, and if I, with this resistor, ground it and am able to bring it, change the behavior here, we know it's floating and not being driven. And I can. This is what I learned today. which is kind of interesting. I didn't think about this. All right, so we know that one is not being driven. Pin 7 is floating and probably not being driven. So if I hit this to pin 7 to ground, I change from a backward C to a forward C. You gotta look at it like this way, basically. Where am I at? There we go. See, that's what it normally is, the backward C, and then I hit pin 7 and I change it to a forward C. Okay, and now if pin 6 was actually being driven high, like I alluded to what I was thinking was happening, it was being driven high, then I should not be able to pull this low with this resistor here. So pin 6, I just touched pin 6 and I changed it to a 3. From a backward C, change it to the pin 3. So basically we know that so far, and now if I go to pin 2, let me change pin 2's low, so I need to hook up to my 5 volts and try to make pin 2 high. Whoops. Going to try to make pin 2 high, and I can't. If I touch it, I can't make pin 2 high. So the PIA via the code is driving pin 2 low, but the code is basically letting these float. And what Sean said is he actually looked at the code, and I'll link to the klov thread because I don't understand it, but he did a breakout of the code via MAME and stuff. Is that the code, I think, is changing these to be inputs versus outputs, and the difference here is that PB7 and PB6 most likely behave differently. When they're as an input, they start low and then float high, versus this CA2 line, which looks like it starts kind of, high or something, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of like the difference of the PIA and how these PB lines behave differently than the CA lines and maybe the CB lines. Not sure, but regardless, we just proved that they are floating. They are not specifically being pulled down low like they are on the Joust. So anyway, mystery solved. I know this is a long video, guys. This is my Jacklick journey, right? I mean, it's not me telling you how to do things, but just sharing with you, how I'm learning and going about it. So hopefully you guys learned something, and a big thanks to Sean Riddle who basically figured it out. And this has been like one of those unknown things. Probably hasn't bothered a lot of people, but an unknown thing for Sinistar ROM boards since the beginning. So obviously a code bug or something weird from Williams from the factory. The other thing that was interesting is they had 3 revisions of the ROM. Why wouldn't they fix that? It's kind of crazy, right? I mean, they have the prototype revision, revision 2, and then revision 3, which is the kind of like the default one, I guess. Does not make sense to me. Why they so anyway, what the hell was I going to say? Thanks for watching, I guess, and following this journey here. And I like sharing the stuff as I learn too, so it's kind of mutually beneficial, hopefully, for a few people. My Sinistar board's working is the bottom line, and I think I'm done with signature analysis too. I did sig analysis on these ROMs, those ROMs. I might come back and try to figure out how to get these 2 buffer chips enabled through these. There's one more line that I might come back, not in this video, but a different video. So, all right, that's it. Bye. Cheers.